Good morning. How's everyone today?
Good. How about yourself?
Excellent.
Yes!
Wow, it's been a long time since I've been in front of such a lively crowd.
I'm sorry.
I guess everyone's really pumped here for NEPA BlogCon 2013. Today we're going to talk a little bit about HTML5 and CSS3 as it pertains particularly to bloggers. How many of you have any type of web experience, writing HTML, doing CSS? Okay, a few of you. All right. So some of the stuff I'm going to start off with may be a little boring to you. Don't worry. What I'll do is I'll make a huge loud noise so that way everyone wakes up about halfway through the talk. But no, I wanted today to kind of talk a little bit about where we're at as far as HTML and why HTML5 and CSS3 are extremely important, especially for bloggers. So why should you really care about this stuff? Have you ever authored a blog and wanted to have more control over your blog post? You wanted to change the style of your blog post, you wanted to add a table or some type of picture in the middle of your post, and maybe the editor you were using really didn't give you the complete control you wanted? We're going to talk a little bit about grabbing a blog post, modifying the HTML today, and you'll get a pretty good feel on how to go ahead and do that. Or maybe you have something installed like a content management system like WordPress, Orchard, Drupal, or one of the million other content management systems that are available out there. You wanted to create your own theme. You didn't want to download just one of these free themes from online. Again, HTML and CSS will really allow you to do that. So we'll spend a little time today walking through some of that stuff. So HTML was born about 22 years ago today, in 1991. It wasn't created by Al Gore. I mean, we all know that he invented the internet, right? But instead, it was actually developed by Sir Tim Berners-Lee. Since that time, you can see this timeline down here in the lower right-hand side. We have quite a few different versions of different web technologies that were released. We had HTML in 1991. In 94, we had HTML2, and so on and so forth, until 2008. We decided it's time for a new web. Let's try to standardize everything across all types of browsers and introduce HTML5 and CSS3. So just a little bit of background on what HTML is, because I'm sure everybody has heard of it, but I'm sure not everybody knows exactly what it is. HTML stands for Hypertext Markup Language, which you may be sitting there saying, what in the world is that? Well, really what it is a set of instructions that's helping your browser understand what it's supposed to spit out at the end user. Generally speaking, those instructions begin with a less than sign and end with a greater than sign. In between the signs, you'll usually find an instruction keyword, which we like to call in the geek world an HTML tag or element. All instructions can be written in full form, such as foo and foo. Notice that the ending tag contains a /. This helps to indicate that it is a closing tag. So you can see right there on the second foo, we have this little closing tag. Some tags can have nested tags in our content, such as foo, bar, foo. See, I'm extremely creative, right? So here is a very basic common structure of an HTML page. I just went ahead and used a standard editor, and I wanted to create a blank HTML document. You can see at the very top, this is pretty important with HTML5. This is basically allowing the browser to know that we want this page to render HTML5 if you have that capability. So we're specifying what the document type is of this file when it gets displayed in your browser. And notice that right after it, we just have HTML. You'll remember back in like HTML4 type authoring days, a lot of times you would have to put a lot of other gibberish after it. It's short, it's concise, and it's letting your browser know that this is an HTML document. The next step down, we can actually get rid of even some more of that. The main concern there is just the opening HTML. So the language, the XML and S, we can get rid of that. But really HTML is the really important piece here. What that's doing is it's saying, okay, we want to begin our document. So think of when you're creating something like a Word document or a presentation, think of it as being the very first part of that document. That's exactly what we have there. Then we have this head section, and we'll come back to that in a minute, a body section, and then you'll notice here at the bottom, we have this HTML section where we're closing the HTML document and saying this is the end of the document. Right below that first HTML, you'll see that when we have that head section, we have two tags that are, two elements that are really contained within that. We have meta, which sets our character set. So that way we can let the browser know what type of character set we want to be using. And we also have a title. This is the name of the document. The thing that when you open up your blog post or you open up a web page, at the top of just about any single browser it will say, this is, you know, John's page or Jim's page or Jason's page. So that's where you would put it. In between the two title pieces, you would put the name. And again, we're going to go through some really basic things in just a few minutes. The body section is probably the most fun and the most colorful, and that's because that's where all your content will go. Pretty creative, right? We have a head, which is our header of our information, and we have a body, which is really where all the content will go. So again, we're going to walk through that a little bit more in just a bit. How many of you said that you have HTML experience? Again? Okay, for those of you that have HTML experience, has anyone utilized any of the new stuff in HTML5? Okay, not so many. So let's talk a little bit about what's new in HTML5. There's this new thing called Semantic Elements. Now, I didn't catch the entire first talk that was in this room, but I do know it was a Blog 101 talk, and I do remember towards the end of the talk they were talking about really taking your site and trying to tweak it so that way you would have a better ranking on websites like Google, Bing, Yahoo. You'd have better search results. Well, Semantic Elements is really going to help us if we make sure that our blog engine and our posts comply with it. And the reason being is we will be able to take any of our content and actually name it using built-in HTML functionality. For instance, there's an element that you'll see, as an example, article. That would, generally speaking, be the contents of our blog post. Anything that we would want to put out there, we would wrap in this article tag. So when a search engine is trying to take a look at our site, trying to decipher what information is really important and what information is just advertisements because we're trying to really collect a lot of money through our Google Ads account by trying to drive lots of traffic to our site, they will take a look at that and they will spend a lot of time going through the article content because they will assume that that's the more important content that's contained within your site. Versus something like a side. A side is really used for maybe like a sidebar where you would place ads, or maybe you would place your tags and keywords for your blog post. That's generally speaking where that information would go. There's also some new attributes. So for those of you that have authored HTML before, you may know that you could set an input type to type password, to text, and a few other different possibilities. But we can also set multiple other types, such as calendar, date, email, telephone, time, etc. And this is going to give us a more rich editing experience. There's also some new APIs, which is really cool for those of us that really like to dive down deep and do a lot of development. Those APIs really allow us to take control over some additional features. So when you're authoring your blog post, a lot of times I can imagine you're probably sitting there thinking, okay, I just need to get this post to render properly on my parents' PC and maybe my tablet or something like that. But little do you realize, you're going to have some guy overseas who has like some really crazy device that's in the shape of a U and somehow needs to render your content in the shape of a U. So what HTML5 is really allowing us to do is, using things like these APIs, we get to have some additional functionality that we haven't had before. We get to track someone's location if we want. or using the location API. And maybe could tweak content based on their location. We have access that if there's something that we want to stream, we can use something like WebSockets, which allows us to load a page, and then behind the scenes, after our page loads, it can go out to YouTube and grab our favorite video and stream it down to the web browser. And you can see a few other really fun stuff there that we have access to. And then finally, one of the other really big things is something called local offline storage. And we won't get into that too much today. But what that allows you to do is, if you have individuals that are constantly accessing your site and they're hopping on a plane, they may not have go-go internet service on the plane, or they're constantly being disconnected or whatever, you can actually allow your site to be downloaded and run completely offline. And that would usually run directly within the browser. You don't have to worry about saving pages, etc. So those are some of the capabilities that HTML5 gives you. Again, when you're really concerned about blogging, you're not going to need to be as concerned with all of these, but the really big and important things are the semantic elements and the attributes that HTML5 brings. There's also something called cascading style sheets, and I'm going to jump into that next. How many of you are designers, really care about CSS, layout, that kind of thing? Okay, handful of you. Much like HTML5, a lot has changed in CSS as well. So cascading the style sheets, or better known as CSS, allow control over the style of the content. Styles can be both inline, so it can be right within a single document. Generally speaking, if you have a blog post, if you're not using certain things on your theme, and whatever editor you're using, if you highlight something and make it bold, it's going to place inline style tags around your elements. Or it could be an external file. So if you have certain things that you're constantly posting through your blog post, it's a really good idea. For instance, if you're constantly posting tables and you have this really fancy way of displaying information in a table format, it's a really good idea to capture that information and save it in an external style sheet. This way, the next blog post page that someone visits on your site, it already has that information cached in the browser, and that page is going to load that much faster. The style follows cascading rules, with the most general rules located at the top of the document, regardless of whether it is inline or external. So what's really new? There's a lot that's new. And again, I'm not going to cover everything today. In fact, we're really not going to cover a lot of this stuff, but if you're really interested in HTML5 and CSS3, there will be a few links at the end that I would highly recommend you checking out. But there's some new selectors, improved border and background capabilities, font capabilities, multi-column capabilities, some really good graphic stuff. So you can make 3D logos just using CSS. You don't need to worry about doing some really crazy thing in Unity and trying to export that as some kind of object that displays in your browser. Page media, etc. The one thing that I do want to kind of point out, and I've kind of been applying throughout this talk so far, is this last line. The one really powerful thing with HTML5 and CSS3 is it's going to allow us to keep away from browser-specific prefixes. What I mean by that is, if any of you have ever looked at a CSS style sheet, you have probably seen these within the style sheet. And what that allows is your page, when it's rendered, to render properly in all the different various browsers. You should no longer have to do that if you're following web standards. So the -moz for Firefox, -webkit for Safari and for Chrome, and -ms for Internet Explorer, you should no longer need to use. Everything that all the major browsers should be supporting the latest web standards and should be supporting everything that has actually passed through web standards. Now, Chrome is kind of interesting in that Google has, over the past few years, has participated in the W3C organization, which is the standards-based organization. A while back this year, they decided that they were going to break away from using primarily Webkit as their page rendering engine and moved to a version of it that they brought internal called Blink. What's really interesting with that is you will see that Google Chrome will still be trying to push using a prefix. However, if you want to ensure that your page is going to render properly across all the browsers, you really should break away from that within your style sheets. So how many of you did that for already? No? Come on, be honest. All right, so let's talk a little bit about writing HTML. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to hop out. I'm going to jump into a couple programs. The two programs I'm going to use is, one I'm going to use is called Windows Live Writer, which is a really good tool. It's a free tool for you to download on any PC, and it will allow you to author blog posts. You can author blog posts to multiple blogs within the same application, and there's plugins for it as well. So if there are some really cool feature out there that you would like, for instance, a better way of embedding a Yahoo video within your blog post, every single blog post you do, it goes out and fetches the weather, anything like that, there's some really cool plugins for it. I believe there's somewhere around 1,500 plugins for that blogging. The other thing that I'm going to show you is, again, another free tool. And this is kind of borderline between being a developer versus just doing some blogging, but I'm going to show you the tool anyway because it does give you complete control over your HTML, and it gives some pretty cool insights into what is actually being created. And that's called Visual Studio Express 2013 for web. And both of those links are contained here, and I believe that this entire slide deck is available for everyone to download. So just give me 1 minute. There, that looks a little better. Okay, this tool, like I said, is called Windows Live Writer. And I have it tied right now to my personal blog. When, as soon as I go through the blog setup, I can connect WordPress, Blogger, anything that really supports the Meta Weblog API. So it's pretty much any blog engine out there. From that, I have full editing capabilities, and it pulls down a local copy of my theme. So I can get somewhat of an idea on what my blog post will look like. So you can see as soon as I open it up, it asks me for a post title, and the cursor is blinking because it's looking for some content. So I can do something such as okay, that was pretty lame. But you get the idea. And from this, I can very easily just go ahead and choose publish. And later on, I'll have to go out and delete this blog post and change it. Ooh, wow, look at that server error. Come on, it wouldn't be a demo without a failure, right? My guess is it has something to do with the connection right now. Give me 1 more second.
How about Mac users? Is there any problem?
I'm sorry, what was the question?
Mac users, is there any similar?
Yeah, so for Mac users, there's a lot of different tools. A lot of the text editors that you would usually use for the Mac, you usually could post any type of blog post. Depending on what you're using, I'm trying to think, what have I really haven't found anything that I've really liked for the Mac, to be quite honest, for editing. Usually when I get to the editing a post, if I was using my MacBook, I generally speaking hop out to the website and just edit my post right through my blog engine. And I'm not quite sure why. I guess I just really haven't found anything that really that I've really liked. LiveWriter is really the only thing that I use as far as an application for editing blog posts. And there's many other tools out there that you can use, but that's really the one that I found that does the best job. Passes over all of my tags if I have tags, syncs my tags with my website, allows me to have complete control over my URL, allows me to set a future post date, those kind of things. So it actually is a really, really good tool. Give me one more second. Let me give one more shot at this. No. Okay, and what I was referring to earlier is if I click in the upper right hand side, you can see that I have complete control over adding tags. I could set a publish date. I can change the URL when my post actually gets saved out on my blog site. So I apologize that that's not working right now. If you see me afterwards, I will see I have actually a hotspot in my bag. I'll power that up and I'll get this thing posted. So, are there any questions with this before we move? Yeah.
When you hit publish, where is it going to? Is it going through an API that looks like WordPress, or do you have a custom setup on your?
Great question. So when I go ahead and hit publish, this is actually using an API called NEPA BlogCon that will actually publish to just about any kind of blog engine out there. It will publish to WordPress, it will publish to Blogger, it will publish to Blogspot, pretty much any blog engine out there. I happen to be using a CMS that has the Meta Web Blog API implemented within it. And so there is a handler that will capture that information and store it locally. But pretty much any blog engine has that API implemented, and it really allows you to export and import your blog posts from one platform to another.
What would you say the benefit is of using, for example, LiveWire as opposed to going straight into the online editor?
The reason why I really like it is because of some of the plugins that it offers. I'm a developer by trade, so I could copy some source code, like any of the HTML, and I can use a plugin, and then when I go ahead and paste it, it formats it properly, and I have some additional control after I paste it. Additional control over the style, the look, the feel. I can highlight certain lines, that sort of thing, versus using just the native editor. The other thing I really like is I can be sitting on a plane and I don't have to worry about purchasing any type of in-flight internet access, and could author a blog post, wait until I land and go ahead and publish it. So I could edit offline. And I could go back through and store multiple drafts, and it's just a little easier to find. So, good question. Yeah, Michelle.
Is it only for Windows 8, and is it built into Windows, or do you have to go and download it? And if you do, is there a cost?
Okay, so this application is actually, it will run on anything from Windows XP on forward, and it is a free application that you do have to download separate. You could just do a basic Google search for Windows Live Writer, or if you use that link I had provided, that'll take you right to that specific download. And it's relatively small. I think it's something like a 2.5 meg download. So it has a relatively small footprint. There have been rumors that there will be a version of this that will be produced in the future, but I'm really not sure what that's going to look like and how it will work. Good question. Any others? All right.
This is actually going back to the HTML or the CSS3 pieces.
Yeah.
What do you recommend, if you're not going to use prefixes to support browsers that don't necessarily fully support things like bordering and
Can you give me an example?
well, like certain browsers, you still need to use the Webkit prefix for certain HTML or certain CSS.
Most of the older browsers, yes. So you still have to worry about supporting a very early version of Chrome or a very early version of Firefox or IE 6 or 7 or something like that, then yeah, you do have to worry about it. If you decide that you're going to be supporting customers that are only using IE 9, 10, 11, customers that are on the edge versions of Chrome and Firefox and Safari, that's something you don't have to worry about. If you do have to worry about it, that's fine, you can still use it. In fact, the editor I'm going to show you in just a minute, if you are trying to use something that requires a prefix, in the CSS style sheet editing portion, it will actually preload all of the browser prefixes in there for you, so that's one less thing you have to worry about typing and figuring out. So if you're using something like opacity, for instance, because you have some kind of floating element that you want to set at, like, say, 50%, you don't have to worry about trying to remember how does that render properly and IE7. It will automatically put in how that would work in IE7. Any other questions? Okay. So let me jump over to this other tool that I was referring to, which is called Microsoft Visual Studio Express 2013 for web. I know it's a mouthful. But this gives you a lot of capabilities, and this is not necessarily a blog tool, but does give you full capabilities. So HTML and CSS is something of interest to you. This is a really good editor for you to use. Again, it's a free download, and it is a PC-based download. However, there have been rumors, again, that there will be a version that will be available at some point in time, either via the web or through some other platform, for instance, running on something like a Mac. Okay? So there are a ton of options within this application, and I'm going to try my best not to confuse you too much. But just like any other standard application, there's a basic menu. So in File, you can create a new file or a new website. I just created a new HTML file, and from here you could see the basic template that I showed you earlier. So I can go ahead and edit and get rid of this. And down in my body, I could go ahead and start typing. So you can see I could type in just some basic text. And from this, again, I have complete control over what this file is going to look like. So I can go ahead and edit CSS and put in some style sheet properties. And it's going to give me a little bit of help, something called Intellisense, which is going to allow me to add properties that I might not be so familiar with. As an example, you can see when I type in color with a colon, I'm going to get a drop-down box with several different possibilities for colors. And I could go ahead and choose one, such as red. Or I can also put in a hexadecimal value, and it will help show me what those colors look like. So again, I do have complete control over the different things here. And it's a really good editor to use for HTML and CSS. I don't want to dive into it too much because there's just so much to show. And there's a lot of more advanced features that I can cover within this application. I will be doing other talks within Northeastern PA over the next several months, and there will be a few more that will dive more deep into this. So if this is something that interests you, definitely see me afterwards, and I could provide you some more information. So. So are there any questions? Yes.
Visual Studio, will it also help out with, like, say, JavaScript or PHP, changing code?
Yes, it will.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah, and something, for example, JavaScript, you'll have full Intellisense capabilities for that as well. So if you create an object, it will remember what that object is later on down the road.
So that'd be a problem, remembering all of it.
Yep. Any other questions? Yes.
I'm totally new, so. So when you mentioned the other program that you used, LiveWriter,
Yep.
does it host, if you use WordPress and the other sites that we post was, it from there will post to all of those sites at one time, knowing the templates that you use at those sites, or do you need to do that each time? Each site?
It will treat each post as a new post for that individual site. If you need to create that same post for multiple sites, you will be able to, just like anything else, copy and paste in. But it's just like if you visited that site and you wanted to create a new post through the admin console, it'd be very similar to doing that and then hopping over to your other site and copying it over. The really nice thing about it is, especially if you have multiple blogs all over the place, it's really cool because you have a single platform essentially you're using for all of your blog. Do you happen to use? WordPress? Okay. Yeah, that works really well with WordPress.
I don't even have any, I only use WordPress.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So, but in the future.
So you just have like a personal blog on WordPress. You don't have any other WordPress blogs. Okay. And is it hosted at WordPress, or is it hosted like at a hosting site somewhere? You're not sure. It's probably hosted on WordPress then. Especially if you went right to WordPress and you created a profile, it's hosted right there. Okay. Yeah. Again, you can use that tool for the same thing. Any other questions? Yep.
Is it important to be able to program your entire post using HTML, or can you just use the tools that are out there?
If you use the tools that are out there, they will usually do a very good job of filling in the HTML for you. If you need to have more complete control over the way something looks, in something like LiveWriter, for instance, I could switch back to it without. Second. in LiveWriter, as I start to type things in here, I can go ahead and preview my source, and you can see up here, it shows me HTML in the raw format. So if I needed to insert some HTML from somewhere else, I can easily copy that, find where I want it to be in here, paste it in here, switch back over into my edit mode or my preview mode, and it's going to show me what it will look like on the site.
So like, going from this LiveWriter thing, if I were to just drop like a canvas element in there, and like try to put a video up there with it, post it as part of the, like, the content of the post.
Yes. Yep. As long as, now, as long as your blog engine supports it.
Okay.
And the reason why I say that is because a lot of blog engines that are out there, WordPress is not one of them. So if you're using WordPress, you don't have to worry about it. But some of the blog engines will actually take a look at the content that you're posting, and just for security purposes, try their best to strip out things that should not be posted. So if you're using one of those engines, you would lose that functionality. The other thing you want to make sure of is on the other end, your theme that you have set up through WordPress or set up through whatever the blog engine is set up as an HTML5 thing. Otherwise, what will happen is if you have it set up as an HTML 4.01 strict rule set, it's not going to render the canvas. Any other questions? Yes?
Sure. You might know this, you might not, but I have a blog on Blogger, and I tried to open it, and I have it all set up to the way I like it, the template, the pictures and all that, and the colors I like, but what I don't understand is why it's different when I view it in Google Chrome. It's different when sometimes it's different. Sometimes it works in Google Chrome with all the colors, sometimes it doesn't. And I did not use any of the HTML stuff. I used kind of the template where it pretty much puts in all the text for you. You know, you say, this is what I want, this is the color I want,
Right.
this is the font I want. Do you know why it will show, and is that because of the extension and you said Chrome is weird?
No, that's actually even more surprising because Blogger is actually owned by Google.
Right.
And so the colors and everything should appear more correctly in
Right.
Chrome, especially using something like Blogger.
Yeah.
Without looking at the theme, I'm really not sure. Chances are there is some type of style that is being removed
Okay.
during your published property
Right.
process, or just when you go to visit the page, it's just not loading the style sheet properly.
Okay, gotcha. Because, well, before, I was in the other room and I viewed it on Chrome, and this is the first time I've actually seen it on Chrome, where it actually does the colors and all that I wanted to do for a while, because then it kind of, I can even show you here. I have it, like, the pictures show up, that's fine, whatever, but it's like in black and white, like this is it side by side. Okay, this is it Firefox, this is it in Chrome. And
Yeah.
I don't know much about it, but
Let me take a look at it after this talk, and I could see if I could figure out what it may be.
and I don't know if it's just my computer that doesn't want to like load the colors. I'm not sure if I checked it on another computer using the same browser, but it do the same thing.
Okay, it shouldn't, if you're using the same browser, it should not have anything to do with your computer.
Okay.
Well, that's why, let's check afterwards, and I'll see if I can load it up on my computer. Are there any other questions? You guys can wake up now. Yes?
I'm sorry, Laura, are you able to see you?
Oh. There we go. You can find out more about me on the left-hand side, and some really useful links are over on the right-hand side. I'm an application developer in this area. I do visit multiple areas of the country annually to give presentations. Usually to more of a technical group, but this is the second year for NEPA BlogCon, and it's the second year I'm here, and you know, they do a really good job putting on this event, and really trying to emphasize how important blogging is online. So, of course, every year I'm going to try my best to make it here and to present. But you can follow me on Twitter using my Twitter handle. Yes, it's Gaylord, like Gaylord Fokker. Here's my website, jasongaylord.com, my email address, and just a little shameless plug. Earlier this year, I finally had a 1,600-page book that was published, and I do have a couple of chapters about HTML5 and CSS3 that are contained within the book. On the right-hand side is the link for the W3C, which is the standards-based organization for HTML, and right below that is a link for more in-depth information about CSS. There's also another really good, popular website for learning more about HTML, and that's the W3 Schools. And then finally, there's a website that was developed by the Internet Explorer team. And, but I must say, if you're doing any type of web authoring, it is a very good website to check out. They've done a great job of pulling together lots of different resources, and will do a good job of allowing you to put in a URL, and it will scrub the URL just to make sure that you're compliant with web standards. And that your website's not going to just load in IE or just load in Chrome or Firefox, but it's going to work across the board with all the different browsers. They also have some really good information that's contained on the Modern IE website as well. Any other questions? Yes?
Just an opinion, when do you think that Apple will get up to date on developer-friendly? It's really hard. I come from the PC world, and I just moved over to Apple, and it's frustrating for my husband and myself. He's a software engineer, and it's just like...
It's getting better as time progresses. There's a lot of really good tools out there that will help kind of fill in the gap. For instance, PhoneGap is one. It really allows you to build an application that will work across multiple different platforms. And there's a few other ones. There's a product called Icenium. And there's also a group of developers that used to work for Novell that spun off this company. It's called the Mono Project, and they have a bunch of different tools that will allow you to build for any of the Apple devices, for the iPhone, iPad, or any of the Android devices, relatively easily. So it's a little bit cleaner, and it has more of an IDE. All those tools have more of an IDE that's closer to that VS Express version that I have. In fact, some of those tools even integrate directly within VS Express. And if you said your husband is a software engineer, he would probably really appreciate that because there's a lot of ways that you can integrate VS Express right within source code repositories such as GitHub. So as he's constantly doing development, he could check in his source code just in case anything were to happen to his machine, and also go back in history.
I just want to mention, when I was doing a lot of developing on Mac, Text Wrangler by Barebones Software is really good. It does a lot of that automatic. It works with PHP, it works with JavaScript, it works with straight HTML. It'll automatically fill in those tags for you.
Did everyone hear Dale's comment? Okay. TextMate's another good one. Yep. Any other questions? Good. Well, thank you. Appreciate it.